I hope you will have a very, very thankful week and spend a lot of time thanking the Lord, and that helps us focus on good things. And we have one thing as a church family to give a lot of thanks about, and that is Glenn Gosser was baptized yesterday, and we praise the Lord for that. So many have been praying for Glenn and encouraging Glenn for years. And for me, it's been over 37 years trying to encourage and pray for him to make this step. He was 91 when we took him over to the Healthplex at Mercy Healthplex, and they made an exception, allowed us to come in and use their therapy pool because Glenn couldn't get up the stairs in our baptistry. And so we were able to do that. And there'll be some pictures and videos around, I'm sure. I've already seen some this morning about that event, but Glenn was so happy, so secured, and when it was all over, he said, "That was great," and it certainly was. And I think Ruth's probably dancing in heaven. So anyway, we have a lot to be thankful for. Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want Jesus to do for you? And why? Why do you want that? What's your motive behind that desire? What's your expectation? In our First Things First series, I hope you've been getting a better idea of what Jesus is really all about and the priorities he desires of us, his followers. To be truthful, there are many who think of Jesus as a benevolent, powerful Lord who is there to favorably grant our requests. In fact, two of Jesus' disciples boldly, if not presumptuously, proposed, "Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." And I think their inquiry exposes us sometimes, because we love to seek and ask Jesus to bless us, to grant our personal requests, to help us reach our personal objectives, to make our lives filled with happiness and good things. And, we also entreat him to urgently bless our loved ones, especially when they're in some kind of peril. And I suspect we seldom seek Jesus to lead us in ways to bless others, or to keep us humble and allegiant to him, or to enable us to serve others for him. Judy Anderson was part of a mission team in the Congo, and the Christians there held a great celebration marking 100 years since the first missionaries arrived in the Congo. And as the festivities were finally dying down, a very, very old man shared a secret he had to tell before he died. He said, "When the missionaries first came, we had never heard of their God or of their book, or had even seen anyone who looked anything like them. And our people didn't know whether to believe what they had to say or not. And so our leaders came up with a test to find out the credibility of these strangers. The test was they would poison one of them and see how they reacted. And they did. First, a little girl got sick and died. And then the husband from another missionary family similarly got sick and died. And it kept happening until one by one, they all died. But none of them abandoned their mission and message. And they all died praising the Lord. And that's when the leaders finally decided their message must be true. And they became followers of Jesus. Selfless sacrifice speaks powerfully. But to be honest, what those missionaries did would be hard for us to do. Yet Jesus said, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. You mean I might have to literally give up my life? Honey, we need to find another church. This one's too demanding. While preparing a sermon, a pastor posted this question to his Facebook friends, and he said, what makes it hard for you to serve other people? What makes it hard for you to serve other people? His congregation gave some real honest answers, like, serving is hard when it doesn't fit into my schedule or plan. Like, I want to go for a walk or take a bath, long bath, but my aging parent needs me to sort their meds and run an errand or simply be with them. Someone else said, serving is hard when their needs seem endless. You know, I don't want to risk helping or serving because I may get sucked into a long ordeal that swallows all my time. Someone else said, serving is hard because I have limited energy after the demanding workday and family responsibilities. I mean, how do you balance time and energy with serving others? But his favorite answer was this one. What makes it hard to serve others? Others, right? Sometimes. Well, sacrificial service was a prominent theme of Jesus, and certainly it was modeled in his life. And so today we're going to consider two accounts with Jesus that vividly communicate selfless service. First, let's look at Mark's Gospel, chapter 10. We'll start in verse 35. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, well, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with? We can, they answered. And Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. When the 10, the other disciples, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, the context, Jesus had just finished telling his disciples that he was going to suffer and die. He was trying to prepare them for his sacrificial, atoning death for the world. And what are they doing? They're arguing over who's number one. You know, they're coming to Jesus with requests to have the most prominent positions in his kingdom. They're looking for special favors from Jesus. Oh, we would never do that. We'd never do that. Well, you know, I have to tell you, last week I actually prayed. I admit it, I prayed for God to help me fix my toilet so I didn't have to spend money on a plumber. And you know, some of you may have prayed for a Bengals victory, be honest. Or how about, Lord, please make our bid on that new house be the one that's accepted, because then we try to spiritualize it a bit. And it's good stewardship, Lord, because we'll dedicate this house to you and use it for good. Or, Lord, bring lots of new people to Western Hills Church of Christ. Fill this place. Make us a great church. Watch out. God may define great church differently than we do. Jesus, we want for you to do for us whatever we ask. And like the 12, we get jealous of people who get ahead of us. Most people are dissatisfied with their jobs. Not everybody, but a lot of people are. At work, there are takers who do whatever they can to get ahead. Workaholism, stealing credit, manipulating the figures, trying to make other coworkers look bad, schmoozing the boss, and whatever. There are also matchers. They think in terms of even exchanges in work relationships, mutual benefits. I'll help you if you help me. Teamwork. And then there are the givers. The givers seek to help their fellow workers succeed even at their own expense. And some are thinking, how do givers ever get ahead? But the truth is, selfless givers are some of the most successful and are definitely the happiest at work. And they're the people that you most want to work with. Givers or servants are often physically and mentally exhausted, but it's a good tired, a fueling sense of satisfaction and goodwill. We become servants when we get our eyes off ourselves and onto Jesus. Jesus is our motivation, our inspiration. He showed us what to do. He made that eye-opening, counterintuitive statement that we read a few moments ago. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. He took up the cross for us, and he calls us to be servants with him. One of the most demonstrative and poignant lessons on serving is recorded in John's Gospel, chapter 13. It's depicted here on our wall. We see it every Sunday, a good reminder to us about the nature of following Jesus. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. And having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Sounds just like Peter, doesn't it? Jesus answered, "Those who've had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. And when he'd finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and he returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them." Now, I love the prelude to this selfless act. Jesus, knowing fully who he is. He's the Lord God. He's the Creator. He's the only one worthy to be served. We sang it today. Who else is worthy? Who else is worthy? There is no one. Only you, Jesus. And the Messiah King took up a towel and a basin and began to wash feet. Jesus defines leadership in that moment. It's serving. That's what leadership is. And he defines discipleship. It's serving. He washed the feet of his inconsistent disciples who would in just a few hours desert him. He washed the feet of those who would, of the one who would betray him. And he showed them all the full extent of his love. And after washing the disciples' feet, Jesus taught his disciples that they should do likewise. You're not above your master. I'm doing this, you got to do it too. And he said, now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. Now, I know there's some cultural distinctives going on in this account, and we don't live in an unpaved world of sandals on dirt roads where people and animals traveled. The Jews of that time were some of the most hygienic people concerned about ritual and religious purity. And common hospitality would provide some means for cleaning feet when entering the home. We might just take our shoes off, right? But they would wash their own feet when they came in, or a servant would wash them. But the visual lesson of Jesus here is so potent for us. We get it. We get what's going on here, and we are to serve. We're to serve even in a lowly fashion, like he did. I want to be like Jesus, don't you? I do. Well, let's think about 4 ways we can grow to be servants like Jesus. First is to develop a sensitive eye like Jesus. I think it's telling that in that upper room, no one volunteered to take the servant role and wash everyone's feet. Everyone considered themselves too important to be a foot washer or even to wash their own, And I think it didn't even cross their minds. But Jesus saw the need, and he saw the opportunity to serve and to teach. Listen, be alert to needs. When most people walk into a room, maybe a small room or even this room, when most people walk into the room, they're wondering if anyone's going to notice them. If they will be greeted and respected and befriended. What are they thinking of me? Do I look all right? What are people thinking of me? But what if you walked into a room and your thoughts were focused on who has needs and how might I help? When you walk into a room, notice the needs of other people. When you're doing your job, or you're out in the neighborhood or in the community or at the store, anywhere, are you on the lookout for people in need? What might you do if you see someone who has a need? I've taught it a lot. Most people hate and try to avoid public speaking. And my public speaking students used to say that they don't like the sensation of everyone looking at me expectantly or judging me, and they're afraid to mess up front or embarrass themselves, and so people don't like public speaking. But listen, do you know the secret to overcome discomfort when you're speaking to groups? It's simply to shift the focus from yourself to the people that you're addressing. Take your eyes off yourself and start focusing on the people you're talking to. Love your audience. Stop worrying about yourself and what other people think of you. Think about their needs. Focus on how your message is going to help and bless them. And when your mind is off yourself, you'll love your audience and you'll get into your message. And you know what? That same principle applies to our relationships and our encounters every day. Get your mind off yourself and focus on others and how you might be a blessing to them. What's going on in their life where they might need you? Ira Wilson wrote a hymn. To be honest, I always thought it was just okay hymn. Not one of my favorites. Because of the slow, dragging, waltz-like lilt. In fact, I don't know, it kind of made me think of a carnival or a circus music or something like that, not worship music. But the lyrics of this particular song are beautiful, and they voice a much-needed prayer. The chorus simply prays, "Make me a blessing. Make me a blessing. Out of my life, may Jesus shine. Make me a blessing. Oh, Savior, I pray. Make me a blessing to someone today." Man, that is a pretty good prayer. And it's in accordance with God's will, right? He's going to answer that prayer. So be alert. You know, Jesus lives in your neighborhood. He lives in the form of that person who needs to be touched by you, who needs to be served by you. Jesus is that latchkey kid who just needs someone to play catch with him. Jesus is the elderly widow who is dying of loneliness. Jesus is that young couple who would give anything for a person with a healthy marriage to come and coach and encourage them. Jesus is the neighbor who needs to stop drinking but can't without some accountability and encouragement. Jesus is that cashier who's bored out of her brain scanning the groceries. Jesus is that mom who seems to have it all together. I mean, the perfect homemaker, able to care for her family and balance the crazy family schedule with a smile. But deep inside, she's shriveling up, needing rest for her soul. Jesus is that guy on the job site who acts tough, who swears constantly, who lives for the weekend, and whose family has left him. All these different people actually need Jesus, and they need you. And Jesus said, when you do it to the least of these, you do it to me. Another thing that we gain here is we develop a selfless heart like Jesus. Richard Foster says there's a difference between choosing to serve and choosing to be a servant. When I choose to serve, I retain control about whom I serve and when I serve. But when I choose to be a servant, I've given up all control. I'm just making myself available. Jesus had every right to expect that his disciples would show him deference, would honor him, would bow at his feet and wash and worship. But Jesus did the unexpected. He humbled himself to render this service to them. No task was too low. Philippians chapter 2 tells us to have Jesus' attitude and action as he emptied himself. And that's the key to serving. Empty self. Because as long as self is a priority, as long as that's what we're thinking about, we're not going to serve. A selfless heart must be developed over time so that we consistently serve people. The greatest sabotager in marriage relationships, any relationship, is self. That's always the obstacle. C.S. Lewis once said, "If you meet a truly humble person, he will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all." We become so selfless that how something affects us personally doesn't even cross our minds anymore. We just act. We're focused on honoring Jesus and blessing others. Shin Dong-hyuk's life was so difficult for us to even imagine. In 2005, Shin became the only person to ever escape from the total control zone internment camp in North Korea. Because Shin was born in the prison, he knew no other life. He'd lived there all his life. And in his mind, the entire world was Camp 14. And there are only two types of people in the world. There were the prisoners and the guards. That's it. And you were born as one or the other. And you lived your entire life that way. Every day, Shin was told what to do, and he did it. For 23 years, he was always hungry and tired from daily hard labor that he had no choice in. But everything changed in one day. A new prisoner named Park was brought to Camp 14, and with him came tales of a different world on the other side of the electric fence. But one particular thing that Park talked about defined freedom for Shin. In his mind, broiled chicken. Park described a world where you could eat broiled chicken and you could eat it anytime you wanted. And Shin had never eaten chicken. But he knew what chicken tasted like: freedom. This quest for broiled chicken led Shin and Park to attempt an escape over the electrified fence. Whether he calculated the cost ahead of time or not, I don't know. But Park reached out and took initiative to first touch the fence, and immediately he died. An untold number of bolts coursed through his body, stopped his heart. His body then became the bridge over which Shin was able to climb to freedom. And that day, he became the only person to ever escape from this Korean internment camp and live to tell about this heroic, tragic tale. Shin is no longer a prisoner. He now lives in South Korea, and he eats broiled chicken whenever he wants. And this chicken, and more importantly, his freedom, was purchased by his friend Park's life. Gave his life for him to escape. You'll not likely be called upon to give your life to save someone, just like Park did. That's probably not going to happen to you. But every day we're confronted with opportunities to deny self and meet the needs of someone else first. As simple as turn off the TV and put down the remote and listen to your spouse or your children. We sacrifice our day off and help a neighbor. We set aside our fear to talk to a friend about Jesus. And we don't worry about what people will think if our home is not perfectly in order, but we welcome the Bible study into our house anyway. Maybe you're in a marriage in which your husband doesn't believe and he doesn't care about faith. You serve him selflessly. You might be asked to help in our children's department here, or maybe to cut the grass outside, or to give a special offering. But we joyfully serve with a selfless heart. You know, Jesus was always honest with his emotions, human emotions. And he prayed. He did pray, Father, if you're willing to take this cup from me. There is a normal human response to self-preservation, right? And yet, he subjected himself to serve his Father and us. He said, yet not my will, but yours be done. And he went to the cross. Following Jesus, we do the same thing he did. So, we also develop a submissive spirit like Jesus. In the scene in the upper room, Jesus submitted to the basic needs of his disciples by washing their dirty feet. And really, in a symbolic way, he was depicting what was to come, submitting to the greater plan of God to sacrificially lay down his life for them. He is the prophesied suffering servant, the Messiah King from Isaiah 53. Now, in the Mark passage in which Jesus said he had come to serve, and in this John passage of the foot washing, two different words are used interchangeably in these passages. Two words, they're used synonymously. In the Mark passage, both words are used, talking basically about the same thing. One word, though, refers to a slave. The other word is simply a servant who does whatever he's told to do, no matter how lowly the task. Both serve at the command of the master and in response to the needs that are before them. Jesus said he came to be that kind of servant, and he lays down his life submitting to the Father's plan to save us, a ransom for many. And Jesus calls us to serve submissively like he does. Submission is not a word our culture relishes, but in the right context, it is a noble and beautiful lifestyle. First of all, develop a spiritual aim like Jesus. Jesus' objectives of being a servant were spiritual in nature, to reveal the nature of the Lord to us, to teach us the lifestyle of servanthood, and most of all, to save us. And our aims in serving are not just to meet the needs of the world, like caring for the poor and the sick, rescuing the enslaved, showing mercy to the marginalized. That's all good, that's important, but our aims as servants go even deeper. It's to help people find hope and build their lives in Jesus. We serve to disciple, to build character, to share the good news of salvation. And as servants, we seek to put Jesus on display in this world. Dave Stone tells the story, and I'll just let him tell it. He said, my Uncle Greg had cerebral palsy, and he was a quadriplegic. He was an incredible inspiration to me. He was one of those guys that had a golden attitude, and he accepted his life and ministers to a whole lot of people in his own way. He was able to get around quite well in an electric wheelchair, but his speech was very difficult to understand. One time, he attended a handy camp. A week at the Country Lake Christian Retreat. One of our members, he says, served as a volunteer that week, and he was assigned to my Uncle Greg. That meant for 4 solid days, 24 hours a day, he did everything for my Uncle Greg. John fed him every bite. He gave him every drink. He slept on an air mattress beside Uncle Greg's bed. He took him to the bathroom and cleaned him up. John got some of his friends together, took my Uncle Greg out on the lake in a flotation device. He swam for the very first time in his life. On the very last day of camp, they asked each handicapped camper one question. What was your favorite thing of the week? And they were a little concerned that anyone would be able to really understand Greg when he went because of his speech. And so John got up front with Uncle Greg, and he talked about all the different things that Greg had done. He said, we've nicknamed him the fish because he loves to swim so much. But then eventually he said, okay, Greg, what was your favorite part of the entire week? And everyone could absolutely understand Uncle Greg, because my Uncle Greg raised his hand and pointed back and said, you. And John said, oh, no, there has to be something else. What was it? The swimming? The snack time? What? And Greg raised his hand again and said, you. You'll never know. You'll never know how much your service can impact others until you humbly pick up a towel and a basin and begin to wash feet in this world. There are many spiritual benefits to serving. Like serving promotes unity and it builds teamwork. Serving side by side creates deep bonds and everyone contributes. Pierre started a ministry to the homeless in Europe called Communities. And the first man that he ministered to was Georges. And after being released from prison, Georges was homeless, jobless, and suicidal. He came for help to Pierre, but he was surprised when Pierre put him to work instead. The needs were so overwhelming, Pierre needed some help. So Georges went to work helping other people in need like himself. And they found that giving people meaningful service actually helped them get their lives together more than anything else. George became the first companion in serving the homeless. They mentored and engaged them in hard work of selfless serving and made them companions in ministry to others. They gave dignity and something to live for. See, serving also changes us. Jesus knows the secret treasure of serving. Serving does something spiritual in you. Jesus knows that when you genuinely pour yourself out for Him to bless someone else, that your character is being developed. There's an inexplicable joy of having help and an indescribable bond that is forged with Jesus. We become one with Him in purpose, enriching and saving lives. Alive in us, Jesus makes Himself known through us. And we become His hands and feet to people who, more than anything else, need Him. And one more idea, serving opens doors. Jesus said, "Let your light shine." So when people see the good that you're doing for others, they will turn their hearts towards God. That's my paraphrase of what Jesus said. Doug Nichols went to India to serve as a missionary, and tuberculosis forced him into a health facility for a slow recovery. And no one was really interested in what this rich American had to say about the gospel. One night, he had a coughing spell about 2 a.m, but he noticed an elderly patient across the aisle, much sicker than he was, trying to get out of bed. And every time he tried to get to his feet, he fell back into bed. Finally exhausted, he heard this man quietly crying. The next morning, Doug realized what the man had been trying to do. Get up and go to the bathroom. The stench was awful. The other patients were yelling at this man. Angry nurses actually slapped him when they had to clean up after him. The next night, Doug woke up again coughing, and there's the same man struggling to get up and just fell back whimpering. So Doug got up, and he put his arms around that man and picked him up and carried him to the bathroom. A small, filthy place, just a hole in the floor. And Doug stood behind him with his arms under his armpits, and he held the man while he took care of himself. Then he carried that man back to his bed, and when he laid him down into the bed, the man kissed him on his cheek and smiled. And he said something that he couldn't understand because he didn't know the language well enough yet. Next morning, all the patients, all the nurses and doctors now suddenly wanted to hear the gospel message. All because of kind act, serving a helpless man. There's a world that needs us. It needs Jesus. No, if we would take our eyes off ourselves, take up a towel and basin, and then use it to help people wherever they're at. Whatever it costs us, just to help people where they're at, so that they might know Jesus. Got a lot to think about today. And maybe some of you are realizing, hey, Jesus really did make a great sacrifice for me. He served me. He made a way for me to be forgiven by going to the cross. And maybe you're ready today to trust Him for your salvation and forgiveness. And if you want to do that, ready to be baptized today, I'll meet you here in the front. Let's stand and we'll sing.